A city that changes skin, breath, and heart, not in decades, but in millennia. A city that is going through wars, revolutions, a digital explosion, climate challenges and technological breakthroughs, in order to one day turn into something so far from the usual Paris that it is difficult to call it just a city. Paris of the 1900s and Paris of the 5100s are not two eras. These are two civilizations separated by 5,000 years of evolution. But what remains the same, even when everything around you is changing beyond recognition? Let's take a look. To understand how Paris turned from the capital of European Romanticism into a futuristic meta-civilization, one must travel back to the very beginning of the 20th century, the 1900s, the era that would later be called the Golden Breath of Paris. Back then, the city lived at the junction of elegance and ambition. Ladies in tall hats walked on the streets, men in suits with canes, and the first cars slowly rolled along the boulevards, overtaking carriages. Paris was the center of world culture, fashion, art, architecture, philosophy and enjoyment of life. It was the city where Picasso created, where modern fashion was born, where painting and literature cut new roads. The Eiffel Tower already towered over the city, but it was considered a temporary structure, a strange experiment that was about to disappear. Paris in the 1900s was a city of streets, emotions, and smells, fresh pastries, sun-warmed stone, tobacco smoke, and printing ink. People were walking along the Seine River, sitting in cafes, arguing about art and arguing about the future. It seemed to the city that it stood in the center of the world, and at that moment it really was not far from the truth. Technology was just beginning to change the rhythm of life, electricity had not yet taken root everywhere, and the telegraph and newspapers served as the main sources of information for residents. The world seemed huge, and Paris was its bright heart. Fast forward time for hundreds of years. The city is experiencing world wars, industrial explosion, mass motorization, digital revolution, crises, upsurges, migrations, climate shocks and technological breakthroughs. Streets are expanding, buildings are growing, transport is changing, people are changing. But Paris itself, its streets, its energy, its desire to be a cultural leader, remains. And yet, by the year 5100, it will be a completely different world. Now let's try to imagine the Paris of the future. Paris in 5100 is not just a city, but a self-renewing organism, a metastructure in which technology does not decorate space, but shapes it. Instead of the usual buildings, there are smart, living structures created from bioadaptive materials. They are able to change shape, regulate temperature, purify the air, and even heal damage. Architecture is no longer static, each house is a flexible system that responds to the needs of its residents. High-rise towers, similar to vertical gardens, are connected by aerial bridges, transports hover over the city on anti-gravity platforms, and the Seine itself is illuminated by soft bioluminescent ornaments. But how could such an infinitely complex metropolis grow out of the elegant but austere Paris of the 1900s? The answer is in the sequence of difficult and inspiring centuries. In the 21st century, Paris has faced climate challenges, traffic jams, environmental pressures, population growth, and technological leaps. This led to the creation of the first green zones, electric transport, and smart buildings. The following centuries only accelerated this process. Over time, the infrastructure became fully autonomous, the energy sector became clean, and the city became self-governing. Fast forward to the XXVII century, Paris became the center of European quantum energy research. Energy towers created stable fields, providing the entire megastructure with resources. The roads became three-level, some moved underground, some hovered above the surface. People were no longer dependent on traditional machines, personal capsules moved along air routes controlled by artificial intelligence. By the XXXI century, mankind had mastered new materials. Architects began using liquid metals, structures that could bend, stretch, and take on any shape. Bridges, balconies, and entire houses were created from them, and Paris became like a living sculpture. The usual streets disappeared, giving way to tiered spaces, gardens and water channels were below, playgrounds for walking above, and highways above. The Eiffel Tower, the symbol of Paris, has been transformed into an energy vertical, while retaining its silhouette, but enriched with new features, from climate control to communications. By the year 4000, Paris began to flow smoothly into a new state. The city ran out of space, and it began to grow vertically and horizontally, creating huge protective domes that regulate the climate inside the metropolis. The horizons glowed with a soft, diffused light. It was not advertising, but information fields that allowed you to navigate in space. People used augmented reality all the time, and the whole city became an interactive system. But the truly grandiose changes occurred closer to the 5000th years. When humanity mastered the principles of gravity engineering, Paris completely moved to the air levels. Floating platforms, multi-level residential areas appeared, and some areas began to be located directly above the Seine. It has also become an energy-active channel reflecting the sky and powering the infrastructure. Now the Paris of 5100 is a tangle of light, energy, and shapes. It requires almost no physical maintenance. Nanostructures embedded in the architecture constantly update surfaces, filter the air, regulate